My fiancée laughing with her mom while I proposed. So I rekeyed the locks and locked her out, saved the quote PDF and smart lock logs, put her boxes on the porch with Go Do Better, blocked her everywhere, and her agency put her on leave after a compliance review. My phone buzzed with a new voicemail, and the transcript popped up in gray text. He took the ring back like a child. She can do so much better than him, a woman's voice said, sharp and tired. I was standing on my porch looking at a neat row of boxes I had set outside, and for a second my hands went cold. That voicemail was the moment I knew I would never doubt my decision again. But it didn't start with boxes or locks or notes. It started with a laugh at the exact second my life was supposed to begin. I'm Garrick Voss, and I was 40 when this happened. I inspect harbor cranes and heavy lifts for a living down near the shipyard, the kind of work where one bad assumption can drop steel through the world. Most days I smell salt, diesel, and hot metal, and I come home with my coveralls stiff from sea air. Selene Marwood was 39, and she sold insurance for a coastal agency in downtown Portsmouth. She was good at it, too, the kind of person who remembered names and birthdays and the way you took your coffee. When we met, she made my small routines feel bright instead of boring. My place was a narrow townhouse in Dover, the kind where the stair treads creak on the third step. There was always rosemary and dish soap in the kitchen, and a damp wool smell from my work boots by the door. Selene didn't officially live with me, but she was there most nights, and half her life was already in my closets. We were in that in-between stage where everything you do feels like a test you didn't agree to take. Her hair ties showed up in my sink drain. Her favorite mug claimed a spot by my kettle like it owned the counter, and I liked it. Her mother was the part I tried not to think about. Corinna Marwood was a charity gala planner with a perfect blowout and a voice that could turn a compliment into a bruise. She measured people the way she measured table settings, like it was all about shine and placement. The first time I met Corinna, she looked around my living room like she was pricing it for sale. She tapped a framed photo of a tugboat I'd worked on and said, "How practical." Selene laughed like it was harmless, and I told myself it was just nerves. Here's the advice I wish someone had told me early. If your partner laughs at you with their family instead of for you, don't explain your pain in a long speech. Just say it once, clear and calm, and watch what they do next. 2 weeks before I proposed, we had dinner at Corinna's condo in Newmarket. Her place smelled like lemon polish and expensive candles, and every pillow looked untouched. Corinna poured wine and asked Selene about her career trajectory like she was a board member. Then Corinna turned to me and said, "So you climb around on docks all day, is that right?" I said, "I test lifting gear. I sign off on what's safe." Selene giggled, and Corinna smiled like she'd won something small. On the drive home, Selene said, "She doesn't mean anything by it." I kept my eyes on the road and said, "It doesn't feel like nothing when you laugh with her." Selene reached over and squeezed my hand, sweet as sugar, and said, "I just didn't want to make it awkward." That was confrontation one, the one where I asked and she answered. I asked, "Can you not join in when she talks down to me?" She said, "It's just her style, Garrick. Don't make me choose a fight over a joke." And I swallowed it because I thought love meant absorbing some things. At work the next day, I stood under a gantry crane while a fog horn moaned out on the water. My gauge needle trembled as the load shifted, and I did what I always do. I checked the numbers instead of trusting the feeling in my gut. That's the thing about my job. Every lift gets a load test, and the truth shows up when weight is applied. I didn't realize my relationship was walking toward its own load test, too. I picked the ring because it felt like Selene, not because it looked like a billboard. A pale stone that caught light softly, set in a simple band that wouldn't snag on gloves or sleeves. I wanted something she could wear on an ordinary Tuesday. I planned the proposal at a small waterfront place in Portsmouth called the Coal Sheds, tucked near the River Walk. Not flashy, just warm wood, quiet lamps, and the sound of water slapping the pilings outside. Selene loved that kind of place, the kind where nobody was trying to impress strangers. Corina insisted on coming. She'll want her mother there for a moment like that, Selene said, like it was a favor for Selene, not a demand from Corina. I hesitated, and Selene kissed my cheek and said, "Please. It'll mean a lot." The night of the proposal, I wore my one good jacket and wiped my hands on my jeans like a teenager. Selene looked beautiful in a blue dress that made her eyes look calm and deep. Corina arrived in a cream blazer and jewelry that flashed every time she moved her wrist. Dinner went fine for the first 20 minutes. Corina made polite talk and Selene leaned into my shoulder, warm and familiar. I almost let myself believe I'd been wrong about Corina. Then the check came and Corina lifted one eyebrow at the prices like she was judging my planning. Selene said, "Mom, stop," but she was smiling as she said it. My stomach tightened, and I decided to do it before I lost my nerve. I stood up, walked around to Selene's side, and dropped to one knee on the old wood floor. People looked over, and the whole room felt like it held its breath. I opened the small blue velvet box and asked her to marry me. Selene's hands flew to her mouth, and for one bright second I saw the future I wanted. Then Corina sighed, loud enough for the table next to us to hear. "She could do so much better than you," Corina said, like she was commenting on the weather. Selene giggled. Not a shocked laugh, not a nervous sound she couldn't stop. A giggle, light and agreeing, and she nodded like her mother had stated a simple fact. I felt my face go hot, then strangely calm. I looked at Selene and said, "You're right." Then I closed the box, took the ring back, set it in my jacket pocket, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Selene say my name like it was a joke that went too far. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking until the cold air hit my lungs and everything inside me turned hard. I drove home with the river fog smearing my headlights. My hands didn't shake until I put the key in my front door. When I stepped inside, the house smelled like rosemary and her shampoo, and it made me angry. I didn't do anything dramatic. I did what my work taught me to do when something fails a load test. I isolated the problem before it could do more damage. That night, I rekeyed the locks and reset the garage keypad. I changed the Wi-Fi password and logged out of the shared streaming accounts with 2 clicks. Then I put Selene's things in clean boxes, taped them shut, and stacked them by the door like I was packing up a version of my life. Here's advice moment number 2, and it's not romantic, but it's real. When someone shows you disrespect, don't leave your life open out of hope they'll become kind tomorrow. Change what you can control fast and keep it legal and clean. I slept maybe 2 hours, and both of those hours felt like falling. At 5:30 I showered, pulled on my work boots and headed to the shipyard. The air tasted like metal, and gulls screamed like they were laughing at me. Around mid-morning, my phone buzzed with an email notification from First Harbor Jewelers. The subject line read, "Upgrade quote and deposit receipt." My chest tightened because I had never asked for an upgrade quote. That was the beginning of the receipts, and receipts saved me. I opened the email and saw a PDF with my name, my card listed, and a deposit charged the day before the proposal. The note inside said, "Per your fiancée and her mother's request, holding higher carat options for weekend appointment." That was the money proof, and it felt like getting slapped with paperwork. Selene and Corina hadn't just mocked my ring budget in the moment. They had already decided it wasn't enough and tried to fix it behind my back. I didn't call Selene right away. I screenshotted the invoice and forwarded it to my personal email, because facts don't vanish when emotions spike. Then I went back to my checklist and forced myself to focus on bolts, pins, and safety lines. At lunch, I finally listened to the voicemail that had come in earlier, the one I hadn't noticed in the chaos. The transcript showed Corina's number, but the message was clearly meant for Selene. Corina said, "Call me. We need to clean this up. If he thinks that little ring was enough, he's proving my point." That was the communication proof, and it made my stomach drop even lower. Corina wasn't surprised I walked out. She was annoyed the plan didn't work. Selene called me 6 times that afternoon. When I finally answered, her voice came out sweet and careful. "Garrick, please don't do this. My mom was out of line, but you embarrassed me." That was confrontation too, the one where I pushed and she flipped it. I said, "Your mom said I wasn't good enough and you nodded." Selene's tone sharpened like a blade. It was a moment. "You're punishing me because you're insecure," I asked. "Did you and Corina pay a deposit for a ring upgrade on my card?" She paused, then said, "It wasn't like that. She was just trying to help. You know she expects a certain standard." And there it was, plain as day, like a crack running through glass. That night, I stayed at a small room I rented above a marine supply shop in Kittery. It smelled like rope and old coffee, and the heater clicked like it was tired. I sat on the narrow bed and stared at the invoice screenshot until the numbers stopped blurring. I called an older attorney I'd met years ago through a dock contract dispute. Ephraim Calder answered like he'd been awake forever, calm and unbothered. He told me to meet him at a 24-hour bait shop off Route 4, where the clerk sold coffee in foam cups. The bait shop had fluorescent lights that made everything look pale and honest. Ephraim listened while I laid out the proposal, Corina's line, Selene's giggle, and the upgrade deposit. He didn't flinch once, just nodded and said, "Do not argue in circles, collect proof, communicate in writing." Ephraim gave me short, sharp guidance. Return the ring with a receipt. Send one clear message about property pickup, and if they threaten you, keep your responses boring. The next morning I placed Selene's boxes outside, lined up like a tidy sidewalk sale. I taped a note on top that said, "Go do better." Then I went to work because my bills didn't care about my heartbreak. By noon, Selene showed up at my door, eyes bright with anger and panic. She knocked like she owned the place, then rattled the handle when she realized it didn't turn. Her voice carried through the door, sweet for one sentence, then sharp. "Open up. This is insane." I didn't open it. I spoke through the door and said, "Your things are outside. Please take them and leave." Selene snapped. "You can't just lock me out like I'm nothing." An hour later, I got a message from Corina, not a text, but a public comment on a community fundraiser page I followed. She wrote that I had stolen a family ring and humiliated a good woman. That was the moment I realized they weren't just hurt. They were building a story. Here's advice moment number 3. When someone tries to rewrite what happened, don't fight them with louder feelings. Fight them with timestamps, screenshots, and calm sentences. I checked Selene's public Instagram later that evening. She had posted a story highlight titled "Fresh Start," and one clip showed her and Corina inside First Harbor Jewelers. The location tag was right there, bright as a flare, along with a caption that said, "Upgrades only." That was the location proof, and it made the whole thing click into place. They weren't grieving a proposal gone wrong. They were shopping for a replacement outcome. I saved the highlight to my phone using the built-in screen recorder, nothing sneaky, just capturing what she put out publicly. Then I did something I hadn't planned to do, something that felt like checking a hidden bolt after a failure. I opened the smart lock app for my front door and looked at the access history. Selene had been a guest user on my lock for months. I had added her because we were building a life, and it felt normal. What I hadn't noticed was a second guest user added 3 weeks earlier. The name on the guest code made my blood run cold. Corina Temporary, created from Selene's phone, with always allowed toggled on. Then I saw the app login history, showing Corina's device signing in the week before the proposal. That was the killer receipt, and it was the big twist. They hadn't just humiliated me at dinner. They had already put Corina inside my home, like I was furniture to be rearranged. Ephraim helped me lay it all out in a clean packet. Voicemail transcript from Corina. Deposit receipt for the ring upgrade. Public Instagram highlight with the jewelry store tag. And the smart lock access logs showing Corina's account added before the proposal. We requested a mediation session through a local dispute resolution office in Exeter. The conference room smelled like dry carpet and stale air, with a wall clock that sounded too loud. Selene arrived with Corina, both dressed like they were attending a meeting where they expected to win. That was confrontation 3, the final one, and it happened after proof. Selene started with denial. "None of this is what it looks like. My mom didn't mean that voicemail like that." Corina added, "He's twisting things, he's dramatic." Then Selene minimized. "It was one comment, one laugh." "He walked out over nothing," she said, palms up like she was explaining weather again. Ephraim slid the printed voicemail transcript across the table and the room went quiet. Selene partially admitted, because she had to. "Okay, the upgrade deposit happened, but it was supposed to be a surprise," she said, eyes darting to her mother. "I said, a surprise paid with my card arranged with your mother before you even said yes." Then came the emotional move, the part meant to melt me. Selene's eyes filled, her voice shook, and she said, "I just wanted to feel chosen. I wanted you to fight for me." I looked at her and said, "I did fight. You laughed while I was on my knee." Ephraim kept his tone flat and steady, like a man who'd seen every trick. He told them the ring had been returned with a receipt, and any claim otherwise would be met with documentation. He also told Selene, in plain words, that unauthorized use of a client system's mindset, even outside work, could have consequences in her profession if she kept escalating and lying. That part landed harder than I expected. Selene's insurance license wasn't just a job badge. It was her security, her identity, her leverage. Corina finally betrayed her own daughter the way people do when their image is at risk. She snapped at Selene. "You should have handled him better," like Selene was a waiter who dropped a plate. Selene turned to her mother, stunned, and in that moment the giggle died for good. After mediation, Selene tried to spin the story online again. But Corina's fundraiser comment got removed by the page admin, and the admin posted a quiet note about respectful conduct. In a small town, that kind of correction is a spotlight. The real consequences came a week later. Selene's agency put her on leave after a compliance review because she had used her work email to communicate about client-like screening standards and eligible partners, and someone inside reported it. Not because I asked them to, but because Corina's messy public smear led people to look closer, and Selene's own paper trail did the rest. Selene called me from an unknown number, frantic and angry at once. She said, "My mom won't let me stay with her and my job is on the line. Are you happy now?" I told her. "I didn't do this to you. You did it when you nodded." A month later, the shipyard promoted me to lead inspector on a new project. More responsibility, more pay, and a bigger crew trusting my calls. On my first day in the new role, I ran a load test and watched the needle hold steady, and it felt like my chest could finally breathe. Selene tried to reach me again in a different way. Not a certified letter, not a dramatic visit, but a LinkedIn message that read, "I miss our life. Can we talk like adults?" I stared at it for a long time, then I blocked her there too. I moved my things into a different place by fall, a small house farther inland where the nights were darker and quieter. I kept my kitchen routine, the rosemary, the clean counters, the boots by the door, but the air felt like mine again. And I stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. The fresh start didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived in small, calm moments, like eating dinner without waiting for the next insult. It arrived when I realized silence can be a kind of safety. In December, I met Tamsin Leclerc at a community volunteer event helping clean up a marsh trail. She coordinated wildlife rehab transport for a local rescue, steady hands and steady eyes. When she laughed, it wasn't at someone. It was with them. We took it slow because I had learned what rushing hides. One night, months later, we ate at a food truck yard in Bidford, string lights overhead and steam rising from paper trays. Tamsin asked about my work, and when I explained how a load test tells the truth under pressure, she nodded like she understood. I don't hate Selene now. I don't even hate Corina. I just respect the lesson they gave me without meaning to. A relationship should not require you to swallow humiliation to earn peace. If the person beside you joins the crowd throwing stones, that's not love under stress. That's the moment the bond fails its load test, and walking away is the safest call you can make. Thank you so much for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel.